The unlikely alliance, the explosions, started at 0300 hours, ship time. Kira Thorne jolted awake in her cramped quarters as the mining station Omega-7 shuddered around her. Emergency klaxons screaming through the corridors like wounded animals. The harsh red glow of alert lighting painted everything in shades of blood and shadow. She rolled from her bunk, feet hitting the cold metal deck, as another blast rocked the station. Through the small porthole, she could see the twisted wreckage of what had been the main docking bay, now a flower of bent metal and escaping atmosphere. Raider ships circled the station like vultures, their weapons charging for another strike. Kira grabbed her emergency kit and headed for the door, her military training kicking in despite 3 years of civilian life. She had hoped those days were behind her, but it seemed the galaxy had other plans. A corridor outside was chaos, panicked miners and technicians running in all directions, some wounded and bleeding, others simply paralyzed by fear. Engineering Section 7 is sealed off. Someone shouted over the alarms. Life support is failing in the outer rings. That was where the Valkyrian was stationed. Kira hesitated for a moment, her hand on the emergency bulkhead controls. Zarathex had been assigned to the mining station 6 months ago, part of a prisoner exchange program that nobody really believed in. The Valkyrian Empire had been at war with human colonies for decades, and old hatreds died hard. Most of the crew avoided Zarathex, treating her with barely concealed suspicion. She was tall and imposing, with a distinctive blue-gray skin and ridge crest that marked her as a warrior caste. Her people were known for their strength, their honor, and their absolute loyalty to their own kind. To humans, they were the enemy, but Kira had served in the border wars. She had seen what real monsters looked like, and Zarathex was not one of them. The Valkyrian worked her shifts without complaint, spoke only when necessary, and kept to herself. She was professional, competent, and completely alone. Another explosion shook the station, closer this time. Kira made her decision and punched the emergency override, cycling through the damaged airlock into Section 7. The corridor beyond was dark, emergency lighting flickering intermittently. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic taste of burned electronics. She found Zarathex trapped beneath a fallen support beam, blue blood seeping from a gash on her forehead. The Valkyrian's golden eyes fixed on Kira with a mixture of surprise and something that might have been resignation. "You should not have come," Zarathex said, her voice strained but steady. "This section is compromised. The life support will fail soon." "Maybe," Kira replied, kneeling beside the trapped alien. "But not if we fix it first." She activated her emergency torch, examining the beam that had Zarathex pinned. It was heavy, but not impossible to move with the right leverage. More importantly, the support structure around them was still sound. They had time if they were smart about it. "You waste your life for an enemy," Zarathex said, watching Kira work. "This is not logical." "Logic is overrated," Kira muttered, positioning her cutting tool. "Hold still." The beam was made of reinforced titanium alloy, designed to withstand the stresses of deep space mining. It would take time to cut through, time they might not have. But Kira had learned patience in the military, along with a dozen other skills that served her well in civilian life. As she worked, Zarathex studied her with those alien eyes. "Your people speak of honor, but I have seen little of it. You attack the weak, betray your allies, abandon your wounded. Why do you help me?" "Because you're not my enemy," Kira said simply. "You're my colleague. Maybe my friend." The Valkyrian's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering across her features. "Friend," she repeated, as if testing the word. "Your language has no true equivalent, our concept of battle bond. This word, friend, it is ... insufficient. It's what we have," Kira said, the cutting beam making steady progress through the metal. Maybe it's enough. The station shook again, and somewhere in the distance, Kira could hear the sound of structural collapse. The raiders were being thorough, she realized. This was not a simple smash-and-grab operation. Someone wanted Omega-7 completely destroyed. There, she said, as the beam finally gave way. Can you move? Zarethix tested her legs, wincing as she shifted position. I can walk. But the damage to the life support systems is extensive. Without immediate repair, this section will be uninhabitable within the hour. They made their way through the damaged corridors, Kira leading while Zarethix limped behind. The Vulcarian's injuries were more serious than she had initially let on, but she pressed forward with the stoic determination of her people. They reached the environmental control room, just as the emergency power began to fail. The primary circulation pump is offline, Kira reported, scanning the damaged systems. The backup is running at 30% capacity. We need to reroute power from the secondary grid. The secondary grid feeds the emergency beacon, Zarethix pointed out. If we disable it, no one will know we survived. Kira paused, her hand hovering over the control panel. The Vulcarian was right. Without the beacon, they would be presumed dead along with the rest of the crew. But without life support, they would be dead anyway. Rescue ships will come, she said finally. They always do. But they won't find anything to rescue if we're already dead. She made the adjustment, rerouting power to the life support systems. The air recyclers hummed back to life, and the temperature began to stabilize. It was a temporary solution at best, but it would buy them time. You sacrifice the certainty of rescue for the possibility of survival, Zarethix observed. This is the human way? This is my way, Kira corrected. I don't leave people behind, not if I can help it. They worked together for the next several hours, repairing damaged systems and reinforcing the failing infrastructure. Zarethix proved to be surprisingly skilled with human technology, her large hands delicate and precise as she worked. She was also intelligent, asking insightful questions and offering practical suggestions. You are not what I expected, she said during a brief rest. I was told humans were selfish, that they would abandon their own kind for personal gain. Some would, Kira admitted, but not all. People are complicated, regardless of species. My people believe in the concept of honor debt, Zarethix explained. By saving my life, you have bound us together. I cannot repay this debt with mere gratitude. You don't owe me anything, Kira said. I helped because it was the right thing to do. And that, Zarethix said quietly, is why the debt exists. They were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Kira grabbed her weapon, an industrial plasma cutter that could double as a defensive tool. Zarethix positioned herself beside the doorway, her natural warrior instincts taking over. The figures that appeared in the corridor were not raiders. They wore the uniforms of Helix Corporation Security Forces, the same company that held the mining rights to Omega-7. But something was wrong. Their weapons were drawn, and they moved with the purposeful stride of hunters, not rescuers. Sweep every section, the lead figure commanded. The directive is clear. No survivors. Kira and Zarethix exchanged glances. The attack had not been random. Someone had wanted the mining station destroyed, and they were making sure there would be no witnesses. Helix Corporation, Zarethix whispered. They orchestrated this. But why? Kira asked. What could they gain? The answer came from the security team's radio chatter. Confirm the asteroid field surveys are complete. The new mining rights go into effect once the station is officially declared lost. It was a land grab, Kira realized. Helix had discovered something valuable in the asteroid field, something worth more than the existing mining operation. The easiest way to claim it was to eliminate the competition. along with anyone who might ask inconvenient questions. "We need to reach the communication array," Kira said. "Get word out about what really happened here." "The array is in the central hub," Zarathex replied. "To 3 sections of compromised corridor, past an unknown number of hostiles." "Then we better get moving," Kira said, checking her improvised weapon. "Unless you have a better idea." "Zarathex?" Expression was grim but determined. "I have one. But you will not like it." She explained her plan in quick, efficient terms. It was dangerous, requiring them to split up and use the station's ventilation system to avoid the security teams. Kira would create a distraction while Zarathex made her way to the communication array. "It's suicide," Kira said when she finished. "You're injured, and you don't know the station layout well enough." "I am expendable," Zarathex replied. "You are not. If only one of us survives to tell this story, it should be you." "Like hell," Kira shot back. "We do this together, or we don't do it at all." For a moment, the 2 women stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Then Zarathex did something unexpected. She smiled, an expression that transformed her alien features into something almost human. "You continue to surprise me, Kira." "Thorn, very well. Together." They moved through the station like ghosts, using maintenance shafts and emergency corridors to avoid the security teams. Zarathex's S-Warrior training served them well, her enhanced senses alert to every sound and movement. Kira's engineering knowledge guided them through the maze of passages, finding routes that others would miss. But as they approached the central hub, it became clear that their luck was running out. The security teams had established a perimeter, and there was no way to reach the communication array without exposing themselves to hostile fire. "We need another distraction," Kira said, studying the layout. "Something big enough to draw them away from the hub." "The fusion reactor," Zarathex suggested. "A controlled overload would trigger evacuation protocols." "And kill us all in there?" "Process," Kira pointed out. "Not if we time it correctly. The safety systems will prevent a catastrophic failure, but the threat alone will force them to respond." It was risky, but it was their only chance. They made their way to the reactor control room, where Kira began the delicate process of initiating a controlled power surge. The radiation alarms began to wail almost immediately, and they could hear the security teams scrambling to respond. "Go," Kira said, her hands flying over the controls. "I'll maintain the distraction as long as I can. What about you?" Zarathex asked. "I'll be right behind you," Kira lied. "Just get to that communication array." For a moment, Zarathex hesitated. Then she nodded and disappeared into the corridors, moving with the fluid grace of a born predator. Kira watched her go and turned back to the reactor controls. The power surge was building, just as she had planned. But she had not told Zarathex the whole truth. Maintaining the distraction would require manual control, and someone would have. To stay behind to prevent the reaction from going critical dot, it was a fair trade, she told herself. One life for the chance to expose the truth. Zarathex would reach the communication array, send out the evidence of Helix Corporation's crimes, and maybe prevent other stations from suffering the same fate. The reactor warning systems were screaming now, red lights flashing throughout the station. In the distance, she could hear the security teams abandoning their posts, rushing to deal with the apparent emergency. Kira smiled grimly and settled in to wait. She had done her job. Now it was up to Zarathex to do hers. But as the minutes ticked by, something unexpected happened. The reactor room door burst open, and Zarathex stumbled inside, her face flushed with exertion. "The communication array is secure," she reported breathlessly. "Message sent to the Colonial Authority and the Valkyrian Embassy, but we need to go. Now." "You are supposed to evacuate," Kira said, confusion evident in her voice. The reactor will be fine, Zarathex interrupted, moving to the controls. The safety systems will engage automatically once we're clear. But I am not leaving without you. She began the shutdown sequence, her large hands surprisingly gentle on the delicate controls. The power surge began to subside, the warning alarms gradually falling silent. Why? Kira asked, though she thought she might already know the answer. Because, Zarathex said, helping her to her feet, you did not leave without me. They made their way through the station's corridors one last time, past the abandoned security posts and the still smoking wreckage of the Raider attack. The evacuation. Pods were waiting in the emergency bay, their systems powered and ready. As they strapped themselves in, Kira looked at her unlikely companion. What happens now? Now, Zarathex said, we tell the truth. And perhaps we discover that honor is not bound by species. The pod launched into the void, carrying them toward the approaching rescue ships. Behind them, Omega-7 continued its slow death spiral, another casualty of corporate greed and political expediency. But the truth would survive. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to change things. Asterisk trust forged in fire, the rescue ship. Meridian arrived 12 hours after the escape pod's distress beacon activated. Captain Sarah Chun had seen her share of mining disasters, but the destruction of Omega-7 was different. The debris field stretched for kilometers, and the few survivors they had picked up told conflicting stories about what had happened. Kira stood in the medical bay, watching as the ship's doctor treated Zarathex. Injuries. The Valkyrian's wounds were healing remarkably fast, her alien physiology adapting to the trauma with typical efficiency. But there was something else in her expression, a wariness that had not been there before. The preliminary reports are calling. It a Raider attack, Captain Chun said, reviewing the datapad in her hands. Standard smash-and-grab operation that went wrong. The official casualty count is 87 dead, 15 survivors. It was not Raiders, Zarathex said from the medical table, her voice flat but certain. It was Helix Corporation. They orchestrated the attack to cover their illegal mining claims. Captain Chun's expression remained neutral, but Kira could see the skepticism in her eyes. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? We transmitted the evidence to the Colonial Authority. Before evacuating, Kira said. Communication logs, security footage, everything we could gather. Unfortunately, the communication array was destroyed in the attack, Captain Chun replied. No transmissions were received by any authority. It's possible your message was lost. In the chaos. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Kira felt her stomach drop as she realized what the captain was really saying. Without proof, their story was just another conspiracy theory. Helix Corporation would spin the narrative to their advantage, and the truth would be buried along with the 87 dead. There were security teams on the station, Zarathex insisted. Helix personnel with orders to eliminate all witnesses. They spoke of new mining rights, of claiming the asteroid field. I'm sure they did, Captain Chun said, her tone suggesting otherwise. But trauma can affect memory, especially in alien physiology. The medical team will need to conduct a full psychological evaluation before your testimony can be considered. Reliable. Dex was an enemy alien, her word worth less than nothing in human courts. And Kira herself was a former military officer with a history of insubordination. Their credibility was already compromised. Captain, Kira said carefully, I've worked with Helix Corporation before. They have a history of cutting corners, of prioritizing profit over safety. This would not be the first time they've used questionable methods to expand their operations. Even if that were true, Captain Chun replied, accusations without evidence are meaningless. The official investigation will determine what really happened at Omega-7. An investigation that would be conducted by colonial authority officials, many of whom had close ties to Helix Corporation. Kira realized that their fight was far from over. In fact, it might just be beginning. Over the next several days, as the Meridian traveled toward the nearest colonial authority station, Kira and Zarathex found themselves increasingly isolated. The other survivors avoided them, whether out of fear, suspicion, or simple self-preservation. The ship's crew was professional, but distant, treating them as potential troublemakers rather than victims. "They do not believe us," Zarathex observed, during one of their brief conversations in the ship's recreation area. "To them, we are the enemy and the conspiracy theorist." "Maybe," Kira said, "but that doesn't mean we stop fighting." "Fight with what?" Zarathex asked. "We have no weapons, no allies, no proof. They have the power to reshape reality itself." It was a fair point. Helix Corporation had vast resources and political influence. They could afford to hire the best lawyers, buy the most favorable media coverage, and pressure officials to reach the right conclusions. Two survivors with an impossible story stood little chance against such an opponent. But Kira had learned something during her military service that she had never forgotten. Sometimes the smallest actions could have the largest consequences. A single person in the right place at the right time could change the course of history. "There is something else," Zarathex said quietly. "Something I have not told you." She waited until they were alone in the ship's observation deck. The stars, wheeling slowly outside the viewport. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My people have been monitoring human asterisk." "A legal distinction without meaning," Zarathex said. "I am still Valkyrian, still the enemy, but there is another way." She explained her plan in careful detail. It was complex, requiring them to reach the Valkyrian embassy on the frontier world of New Geneva before the official investigation concluded. If they could present their evidence to the right people, it might be possible to trigger a joint investigation that Helix Corporation could not suppress. "It's dangerous," Kira said when she finished. "If we're caught interfering with an official investigation, we could be charged with sedition. And if we do nothing, more innocent people will die," Zarathex replied. "Is that not a greater crime?" The next morning, as the Meridian prepared to dock at Colonial Authority Station Beta 7, Kira made her decision. She activated the ship's maintenance protocols, triggering a minor environmental alarm that would require several hours to resolve. In the confusion, she and Zarathex slipped away from their assigned quarters and made their way to the cargo. Baydat the smuggler's ship was exactly where the intelligence report had indicated. The Nightfall was a modified freighter with enhanced engines and shielded cargo holds, perfect for moving sensitive materials across contested space. Its captain, Marcus Webb, was a man with flexible morals and expensive tastes. 2 passengers. "To New Geneva," Kira said, sliding a credit chip across the table. No questions asked. Webb examined the chip with professional interest. "This is a lot of money for a simple passenger run." "What's the catch?" "No catch," Kira replied. "Just a desire for privacy." "Privacy I can provide," Webb said, pocketing the chip. "But if you're running from the law, that's extra." "We're not running from anything," Zarathex said, her voice carrying a subtle menace. "We are running toward something." Webb looked at the tall Valkyrian, taking in her warrior's bearing and the barely concealed weapons she carried. "Right. Well, in that case, welcome aboard the Nightfall. We leave in 1 hour." The journey to New Geneva took 3 days through hyperspace, 3 days of cramped quarters and recycled air. Kira found herself spending most of her time with Zarathex, sharing stories of their respective worlds and cultures. The Valkyrian was surprisingly well read, with a deep understanding of human literature and philosophy. "Your people fear us," Zarathex said during one of their conversations. But they do not understand us. We are not so different. You and I, we both value honor, courage, loyalty to our people. Then why have we been fighting for so long? Kira asked. Because fear is easier than understanding, Zarathex replied. And because there are those who profit from our conflict. It was a sobering thought. The war between humanity and the Valkyrian Empire had lasted for decades, consuming resources and lives on both sides. But what if it was all being orchestrated by corporations and politicians who benefited from the chaos? New Geneva was a frontier world, its cities built around the massive spaceports that served as gateways between human and alien territories. The Valkyrian embassy was located in the diplomatic quarter, a complex of buildings that represented the various species and governments that maintained relations with the colonial authority. Ambassador Turiseth was an elderly Valkyrian with the distinctive silver crest markings of the diplomatic caste. He listened to their story with growing interest, occasionally asking pointed questions about specific details. When they finished, he was silent for a long moment. "This is a grave accusation," he said finally. "If true, it suggests that human corporations have been deliberately targeting Valkyrian civilians as well as your own people." "We have evidence," Kira said, producing the data storage device they had salvaged from Omega-7, Helix Corporation's own records showing their involvement in the attack. Ambassador Turseth examined the device with the careful attention of a professional diplomat. This information would need to be verified by independent sources. But if authentic, it could provide the basis for a formal complaint to the Galactic Council. "Will you help us?" Zarathex asked. "I will do what I can," the ambassador replied. "But understand that this will not be easy. Helix Corporation has powerful friends, and they will not hesitate to use them." Over the next several days, Kira and Zarathex worked with the embassy staff to prepare their case. The evidence was compelling, but it would need to be presented in exactly the right way to have maximum impact. They were racing against time, knowing that the official investigation would soon conclude with its predetermined findings. The breakthrough came when Ambassador Turseth's intelligence network uncovered additional evidence. Other mining stations had suffered similar accidents in recent months, all of them in areas where Helix Corporation had subsequently claimed new mining rights. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to look. "We have enough for a formal complaint," the ambassador announced during one of their planning sessions. "But we need a human official to co-sign the filing. Someone with the authority to challenge Helix Corporation's narrative." "I know someone," Kira said after a moment's thought. "Colonel Martinez, my former commanding officer. He's now working for the Colonial Authority's Internal Affairs Division. If anyone would be willing to listen, it would be him." The meeting was arranged for the following day in a secure conference room at the embassy. Colonel Martinez arrived with a small team of investigators, their expressions serious but skeptical. Kira had not seen her former commander in 3 years, and she was struck by how much he had aged. "This is quite a story you're telling," Martinez said after reviewing the evidence. "Helix Corporation orchestrating terrorist attacks on their own facilities. It sounds like something out of a conspiracy thriller." "It sounds like the truth," Kira replied. "Sir, you know me. You know I wouldn't make accusations like this without solid evidence." "I know the person you were," Martinez sighed. "But 3 years in civilian life can change someone. And your companion here has every reason to want to cause trouble for human corporations." "I have every reason to want the truth to be known," Zarathex said quietly. "As do you if you truly serve justice rather than politics." The colonel's expression hardened. "I serve the colonial authority, and the authority serves the interests of humanity. Sometimes that means making difficult choices." "Like covering up mass murder?" Kira asked. "Like maintaining stability in a volatile region," Martinez replied. The war with the Valkyrian Empire has cost us enough already. We cannot afford to give them additional ammunition for their propaganda machine. It was then that Kira realized the true scope of the challenge they faced. This was not just about Helix Corporation's crimes. It was about the fundamental question of whether justice could exist in a system built on fear and mistrust. "Colonel," she said quietly, "I saved this woman's life. She saved mine. We fought together, bled together, risked everything together. If two people from enemy species can find common ground, why can't our governments?" For a moment, Martinez's expression softened. "Because governments are made of people, and people are afraid. Fear makes us do terrible things, even when we know better." "Then maybe it's time to stop being afraid," Zarathex said. "Maybe it's time to choose courage instead." The colonel was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence spread across the table. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I'll need additional verification, independent sources. But if this checks out, I'll support your complaint to the Galactic Council." "Thank you," Kira said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Don't thank me." Yet, Martinez replied, "This is just the beginning. Helix Corporation will fight back, and they'll use every weapon at their disposal. Are you prepared for that?" Kira looked at Zarathex, seeing her own determination reflected in the aliens. Golden eyes. "We're ready." The investigation that followed was long and contentious, with Helix Corporation's lawyers fighting every revelation. But the evidence was overwhelming, and public opinion began to shift as the full scope of their crimes became known. The companies. Stock price plummeted, and several executives were arrested on charges of conspiracy and murder. More importantly, the case became a catalyst for broader changes in human-Valkyrian relations. Diplomatic channels that had been closed for decades were suddenly reopened, and preliminary peace talks began in earnest. Kira and Zarathex testified before the Galactic Council, their unlikely friendship serving as a symbol of what was possible when people chose trust over fear. The process was difficult, with both facing threats and intimidation from those who preferred the old ways, but they persevered, supported by a growing network of allies from both species. The truth, it turned out, was indeed powerful enough to change the world. Years later, as Kyra stood in the observation deck of the new joint human-Valkyrian research station, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Zarathex joined her, moving with the easy confidence of someone who had found her place in the universe. "Do you ever regret it?" Zarathex asked. "The choice to trust an enemy?" "You were never my enemy," Kira replied. "You were my friend. And friendship, real friendship, is worth fighting for." Outside the viewport, human and Valkyrian ships worked together to explore the frontier, their crews united by common purpose, rather than divided by ancient fears. It was not a perfect peace, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, Kira thought, beginnings were enough.